It is the Anfield Wrap. Neil Atkinson with Mo, Stewart, Beth, Lindop and Rob Gutmann. Coming up, we've got Ian Salmon and John Gibbons with Girls Don't Play Guitars to talk about that play that's coming back on at the Royal Court. Very, very good indeed. Do be excited about that. Plus, we've got a pre-match meet-up coming before Bologna, 4 till 7 in Gravity Max. Free, family-friendly. We'll be upstairs. There's go-karts and there's adventure golf and there's other things as well. There's a batting cage where I keep saying it, but at some point I'm going to go in, face 18 balls, take the shine off, go for one, not out.
Please let me know before this happens. I need to be there.
Just bat it back every single time. Every single time.
Like, you say that like it's going to be easy. That in itself is not easy.
It's not going to be easy. No, but I'm going to be very proud of it once I've finished, Mo. I'm going to commit to nothing outside off.
It's my birthday next month. Can we do it then?
Let's do it then. That is at Gravity Max. Kip on the Cop, Mo. You're doing that as well. Saturday the 12th of October. You can find the Anfield Wrap if you search the Anfield Wrap on Just Giving, but you can find you as well, Mo, if you search on there.
Yeah, on Just Giving, look for my name, or if you can go to any of my social media, click on the link tree, there's a link straight there.
They are, and if you want to sign up to do it yourself, it's not too late to do so. Last thing is, we've had a request in from a friend of the show, I can't say who. I'll use the language that they have actually put in front of me here. I have to read it accurately, which is often one of my weaknesses. We have a special request from a friend of the podcast. We cannot officially say who it is yet, but Channel 4 are making a new TV show about the housing crisis, and they're looking for people who live in Liverpool or the surrounding areas like Manchester, Preston, Bolton, Blackpool, who own a house but don't have a will or next of kin. If that's you and you want to be involved, we'd love to hear from you. Please email casting@expectationtv.com for more information, and the company's privacy policy can be found at expectationtv.com/privacy. Wolverhampton Wanderers 1, Liverpool 2. It wasn't meant to be easy, Beth. It maybe wasn't meant to be as difficult as Liverpool went on to make it themselves. We'll get on to talk about the goal. But I've been running some numbers this morning, and it is exceptionally difficult for any team in the Premier League to rock up anywhere and just win this calendar year. So it is worth saying that Liverpool come pretty close to that, but they managed to almost find a way to make it harder than it needed to be.
Yeah, and like you say, I don't think that's a new thing. I think Liverpool have even at the very best under Jurgen Klopp, they had a track record sometimes for going into games that they should have won and making it a little bit hard for themselves. And I think ultimately in those sorts of games, it's just about getting out with the 3 points. And the fact that they did that is the most important thing. I think it was particularly important in the context of Manchester City having dropped points earlier in the morning. I had a look earlier on at last season, and because it sort of felt like last season, a lot of the times that City or Arsenal dropped points, Liverpool didn't capitalise. And I had a little look at some of City's numbers, and every time City dropped points, I think they dropped points 8 times, excluding the 2 games against Liverpool. And if Liverpool played in that same weekend, they only sort of took advantage of that and won 5 times, which,
right, okay,
it's not the worst numbers, but when the margins are so tight in the Premier League, I think just the psychological thing of trying to put pressure on a juggernaut like Manchester City, trying to capitalise when they drop points is imperative. So I think the fact that they did that was fantastic.
And also they must have known. Sometimes I wonder with the half-5, by the players are out on the pitch warming up, etc., do they get word what's happened to the 3 o'clocks? But there's no way those players don't know when they kick off at half-5 what's happened in the half-12.
Yeah, I think they'll have been very well aware that City will have dropped points, and therefore the expectation will have been on them. I think they'll also have been aware of the manner in which Arsenal won the game. They maybe even were keeping an eye on that one as they were building up to the game, thinking, Arsenal might drop points here, and then obviously Arsenal do what they do against Leicester. So I think it was big, and I think for that reason, I think the psychological element definitely plays a part. Wolves are always tricky for Liverpool away from home. I can't remember too many games where Liverpool have gone there and won comfortably. Obviously last season it's the 3-1, but it's not until late on that game
it's 1-0 at half time to Wolves.
Yeah, and then obviously the season before that was that game we shouldn't speak of where Craig Dawson turned into Maldini, and it was just, Liverpool were just absolutely dreadful. So I wasn't anticipating an easy game. It was frustrating the manner in which they made it hard for themselves in terms of the goal was avoidable. It was completely avoidable, but in terms of clear-cut chances for Wolves and how much Alisson had to do, there wasn't loads, really.
I mean, I agree with everything Beth said there, Mo, apart from the fact that Craig Dawson always had Maldini within him. And it's important to remember that. But also, they don't pick Craig Dawson in this one. And I think that this is one of those games. And I think Wolves are in a bit of a funny position this season. Everyone walking out to the ground, everyone I spoke to who supports Liverpool went, they're a good side, they won't end up in that much trouble. Over the weekend when I've been reflecting on it, I'm not quite as sure, and the reason why is because I think that Wolves are good in midfield and bad in both boxes.
Yeah.
And that's a bit of the reality we have to put up with for a couple of extended periods of that game where you're thinking, God, they're doing X well and Y well, and we can't get out and we can't do this and we can't do that. But ultimately, they are not good enough in either penalty area.
No, and that is something that's always going to be the biggest margin of difference between the teams who stay up and the teams who don't. Have you got a good goalkeeper / defenders? Have you got strikers who can put the ball in the net? I don't think anyone would question the quality, particularly someone like Mateus Cunha. But as you say, the decision making at times really let them down. It's a really strange one, Wolves, Molineux, and I feel like a bit of a weirdo every time I talk about this, because I feel like I talk about this every time we play Wolves or Man United. But that pitch is massive, and it makes a big difference in when you're a team who wants to press and you want to be compact. It really makes a difference. So the Wolves are used to it. So that's why in midfield, particularly early on in the game, we weren't able to get our passing right. They were. They were able to find the right angles because, in theory, in a big pitch, you should be harder to press, so you should be able to always find your man. But because they're used to it, they know the angles to cheat at, so they know how to cut it off a little bit better than we do. So they're able to stop us, and we aren't able to stop them. But then, as you say, once it gets to the business areas, they let themselves down. I wonder how much all of the stuff that we kind of spoken about previously before this game about how Wolves are fast starters but how they fall off a cliff, I wonder how much of that talk played into how Liverpool approached this game, because it was noticeable that some of the players after the match said that Slot mentioned energy and intensity and concentration at half-time, and I felt like that was a little bit lacking, particularly in that first half. And maybe if you're thinking, okay, well, they're going to kind of punch themselves out, we just need to kind of stay calm and then wait and then pounce. Sometimes if you go into a game with that mentality, you aren't snapping into the things in the way that you should be, and you kind of allow the other team to get the initiative.
There's something with it, Rob. I think that's all fair from Mo there, but in the first half you sort of get to see that a little bit, but also the other thing that then happens is that you get to see them tire. I sent you all the race map from StatsBomb, and both sides are bobbing along at less than 0.25 cumulative expected goals there in the first half. I might try and get it on screen as we're talking here if you're watching this on YouTube. And then suddenly a lot changes after the 40th minute from Liverpool's point of view, and it's a long injury time as well. And I think you just sort of visibly saw it. It's not just the idea of the Szoboszlai chance, the passage of play that leads up to it. It's a funny one I've written down here on the agenda. Is there a word for the minute or two just before you can say the goal is coming? Because it was sort of like I was a couple of seconds almost when if that cross from Jota had whipped itself past and gone past everyone, I probably would have turned to Craig Hannon next to me and gone, when the goal's coming here, we just don't need half time. As it was, the goal came. At the exact moment when I was beginning to think the goal's coming, the goal came, because that's exactly when Liverpool score. And there is a thing, I think, where Wolves, we got to 35-40, and they just looked a bit punched out for the first half, if you see what I mean. They began to look like they needed half time.
Yeah, I mean, we talked a lot before how they've been a 55-minute team all season long, and that's why they've had good spells in games, and they can count themselves unlucky to have been, was it winless before? Well, it's still winless. You could see why that would happen. To be fair to them, I thought in the second half he made some good subs, which
their manager,
yeah,
I thought their manager was a good game.
Yeah, it gave them energy. It was like he was very mindful of what had come before. To me, they looked very much same script as ever when you go to Molineux. They're high octane from the start. It's a lively crowd, and they'll hurt you on the flanks. I think the key, they're not good in both boxes thing. The thing up front, I thought Larsson looked a handful, but our two centre-halves are just immaculate. The number of times they had set piece or corners, or their wingers got overloads with their fullbacks and got crosses in, I thought, I'm okay with this, because every time it ended up on a red head, one of two red heads, by the way, Virgil and Ibu. So in that sense, I think we were able to deal with them. It's a strange Liverpool performance. I listened to your post-match thing you did with Dan Austin and Craig, etc. And Dan went early with, we were just crap. I thought, I get that emotion as you come out of the ground and go, bloody hell, that was graft. But I'm more reflected on it. I don't think it's not that simple a story, and I don't think we were crap. But we definitely
they didn't have a shot after the 75th minute,
exactly.
Which is worth saying.
We have a difficult start, and that's the intriguing thing. There were reminders for me of some of what I saw against Forest a few weeks ago. I thought we looked out of rhythm. It had a post-international break vibe to it. And maybe that's just muscle memory because we last played them in last season post-international break and we looked out of rhythm then. I thought it took us a while to get going. And I wondered, I'll create a COD theory on the spot, that sometimes making 10 changes midweek for a lesser competition is everything you need to do. I think maybe in November, December, it's everything you need to do because you've got to get a breather from somewhere. But I do wonder early in the season if you can go too many too soon. I think I'd compare and contrast with, say, with Pep Guardiola, who my impression of the way he rotates is, let's put it this way, he doesn't go pure kids against Watford in the League Cup, does he? He makes 4 or 5 changes. And that's my impression anyway. It feels stronger. And I do wonder, I point my finger at Jurgen at this one as well. There was a tendency to go, there's A and B, A and A plus category games, and then the C and C minus category games, and we'll make all the changes for those games unless it's the business end. I do wonder whether we knocked ourselves a bit out of our stride. We did recover it, but it's something I think the manager might think about.
You could be right. My thing would be, I think, though, part of the reason why we get more rhythm is they drop some intensity.
That helps.
I think that really helps us. I think that I sort of looked at a couple of them as the first time break was approaching, and there was a lot of people gasping for breath. Lamina's got the knock, which I think was no bad thing actually for us.
Yeah.
He's not as comfortable, but he's so important to them. I thought it was mad when they weren't letting him back on the pitch, and he was literally just trying to dictate play from the sidelines because I think he views himself as, these are brainless if I'm not there.
Yeah.
I do think there is a thing where they just do begin to sort of wilt a little bit, and also they haven't got the encouragement of the goal themselves. Wolves, if you see what I mean.
I think that's true, but we're the better team, but by some distance. So I think us finding our feet is perhaps the more influential factor. There's almost a moment, I think it's 5 minutes before the goal, where Mo Salah had a very, very strange first half, actually a very bad first half, suddenly does his man, and he's away. And it almost was like, I say it's the first good action by a Liverpool player in the entire half, but it felt like a moment, like, that's what we do, good. But in that moment, we suddenly looked like the class above them team because there was a class above thing to do. And it seemed to be the good stuff came after that. It was, the Szoboszlai chance. Before then, it had all just been, we'd relied totally on our left-hand side, on Robbo and Diaz, because everybody else was not looking after that football before then.
We will get into a couple of the bits of that. Arguably, Beth, where I'm most irritated with Liverpool over the course of the game is, I think in the second half, the game kicks back off, and it genuinely felt like the Wolves crowd, and to a marked extent the players, had sort of given up a bit. I think they'd sort of packed in, and it's frustrating in that there's 2 aspects to this really. Obviously there's the goal and the nature of it, how much of a gift it is, but I also just don't think Liverpool do enough from 45 to the point of that goal. I don't think they're creating anywhere near significantly enough chances. I think they're trying to manage it, but it was arguably, you manage it by going 2 and then you just stroke it round. I thought that it was about as there for the taking as I've actually seen Liverpool against the Wolves team at Molineux. They just seemed really flat to me coming out second half.
Yeah, I think that broadly is the biggest thing that Arne Slot has to do at Liverpool, because I think that is, certainly over the past couple of years, that's been the biggest difference between Liverpool and Manchester City and Arsenal, because so often with those 2 teams, you see them go 1-0 up and then within 10 minutes they're 2-0 up, and all of a sudden, as soon, and of course, that doesn't guarantee you a win. Obviously, we saw Arsenal concede twice after going 2-0 up at the weekend, but it just more often than not puts you in a really comfortable position. And I think one of my biggest sort of bugbears about Liverpool, even when they were at the very, very best, is that quite often they wouldn't kill off games in the manner of those teams. And, of course, it's about different styles of play and everything like that. But I just would like Liverpool to get more in the habit of doing that. And listen, they've done it this season. We saw Luis Diaz score twice in 2 minutes against Bournemouth last week, and that was
Ipswich.
Yeah. Even at Old Trafford, we scored twice within a relatively short period, and it just completely changes the dynamic of the game, because all of a sudden, even at 1-0, Wolves obviously have a route back into the game, and I just think that's something that Slot needs to maybe try and instill in these players, is don't take your foot off the gas after 1-0. After 2-0, fine. Stroke it around the back all you want, but, goals can completely change the dynamic of the game. And I think as soon as Wolves get a sniff, that's when it becomes a little bit difficult for Liverpool.
It's the encouragement. It is from nowhere Mo the goal pretty much. I think that listen, don't get me wrong. I think that the lad who comes on, Forbes, is really lively and is a footballer to deal with. I know he's probably one we didn't know a lot about as well. So it's worth saying that, and it's worth sort of giving the credit to that to everybody. Well, the mitigation of that to everybody. All of that said, it is Liverpool. As I say, for me, it's both ends of the pitch. Obviously, you put the spotlight on the goal, onto Konate for the nature of the way in which it plays out. But Liverpool just have not created anything meaningful throughout all that second half. I think if they do almost certainly score a goal. It goes the other way, and it just shows it can go from nowhere, and they end up in what could have been real bother.
Yeah, and I don't like using the word complacency because I think it's often used too many times in comparison to when it's true. But there was certainly an element there of we don't think we need to score again yet because we don't think that they're going to be a threat. And if you call that complacency, then that's fair enough.
And it's worth saying they had barely been a threat. They barely had a shot by the time you get to the 55th minute. They barely had a shot.
And one thing Liverpool have been good at this season, over the course of the season so far, is when opponents have the ball, it's never really turned into concerted pressure. It's never really turned into a period where you think, okay, a goal is coming for them, in the same way you were saying the goal comes for us. We've never really had that yet. So whether that kind of lulled them into a false sense of security. But I do think that there was a malaise throughout the team. And if you look at the goal was one of those that really, really wound me up. So I did the thing that I don't always do, but sometimes do, which is go back and rewatch it and microanalyze every single person on the pitch. And it's like a movie. Like, I've got it all written down here. I'm about to extol the virtues all for you. So, first of all, the ball starts at the Wolves goalkeeper. Liverpool commits 6 players to the press, the whole front 6. We're all in the press. Everyone's there. Everyone is doing what they're supposed to do. Then Lemina runs past Szoboszlai. He gets past Szoboszlai, he looks up and he's in space. At this point, McAllister, rather than staying committed to the press, has already started to drop back. Like, side note, I think McAllister struggles at Molineux because he struggles to cover large bits of ground because the pitch is so fucking big. So anyway, but you can tell that that's not the move because you have Salah, you have Jota, and you have Szoboszlai all raising their arms to say, what are you doing? When him and Trent, to be fair, are both start retreating. Then Lemina passes the ball to Cunha. Cunha comes across the centre circle, and you see Virgil, who has Larsson in his sights. You see him turn his back on Larsson and try to front up with Cunha to try and say okay, I'm going to engage you with the ball. Problem is, he doesn't communicate this to Ibu, so Ibu doesn't necessarily know that he now has to track Larsson's run. What he also doesn't do is close the space between himself and Cunha. So Cunha's got an easy pass to play down the side of Virgil to Larsson, whose run isn't being tracked by Ibu. And then there's a bit of bad luck. Robertson comes across. He makes the tackle.
He does really well.
He does really well.
He's the only one who I walked away from going's done really well.
Yeah.
And has really hard lines.
He has some massively hard lines. And the ball obviously ricochets off Larsson straight into the point of Ibu. And you and I have had a lot of conversations before about how much culpability Alisson has. But he definitely looks like he's coming. Like, there's a point where he does come and then he stops. Whether that should have as much influence on Ibu as it does, that's another matter, but it does. Clearly it does. He's still got to do a better job of shielding the ball. That point, of everything I'm about to say, that point, if you take that differently, it's fine. Because you look behind him and Virgil's got his arms out as if to say, just shepherd it away. Just shepherd it away. And if he does a better job of that, then it's all over. But he doesn't. Larsson manages to nick the ball. Meanwhile, you look across at the edge of the area, you've got Lemina and Aït-Nouri who had stopped running. They were running, as soon as they saw Ibu's got the ball, they stopped running. But what Liverpool's midfield never did, they never got goal side. They never chased them back. And then as soon as Larsson nicked the ball, them two started running again. McAllister and Gravenberch don't then start running. So then you've got Aït-Nouri, who's got an absolute clear run from the edge of the box. No Liverpool player even looks in his direction. So Larsson plays the ball to Semedo. Semedo gets lucky again, in as much as he basically trips over the ball and somehow uses that to get past Virgil. Trent then, rather than look behind him and seeing Aït-Nouri running in, goes back on the line to try and block the shot. But he's actually standing behind the line when he has the shot. So there's culpability all over the point. But as I say, if he shields the ball like he's done 1,000 times better, then that doesn't happen. But the thing that I like about that, because like I say, looking at all that really annoyed me. But like I said, it's a indication of the malaise that are thrown through them. The thing I like the most about that is they snap right back out of it. Because you know what? Wolves didn't even touch the ball between scoring the equaliser and us getting the penalty. They didn't touch the ball. We had 10 passes, 40 seconds, straight down the other end, and now we're back into it.
I remember when the goal went in. Obviously, we were all frustrated and annoyed and angry. It reminded me of a goal from the Roy Evans era, the Keystone Cops goals.
Yeah.
And actually, we conceded one in midweek, which is the Quansah own goal. That was
midweek, yeah.
Again, all the same sort of vibes where you go, 3 lads had a chance to clear it, even though you're going to pick on one of them. But I did think at that moment, I've totally subscribed to your view that we come out flat, even flatter than we come out in the first half. We come out flat, and as they were walking back to the halfway line, I looked at the clock and I went, oh, it's 56 minutes, I think I'm right in saying something like that. I thought,
about that, yeah.
That is nice and early, thank God, because we needed this kick up the arse. What I wouldn't have wanted is gone another 15 minutes of complacency, quite frankly, and flatness, and then have to do it. And I think almost the sense that we can start this game again gave them the mental courage, will to get up the other end. And as you said, I sort of said, have we just literally kicked off and won a penalty here? Yep. But you're right. They didn't touch the ball. It was the proverbial kick up the arse. I mean, we've seen it from Liverpool teams throughout the Klopp here. Maybe it's true forever that we need to concede sometimes to win. Thankfully, it was an equaliser rather than going behind.
It was, Rob. The penalty is back to the both boxes thing. I've got no idea what their centre-half's doing really in the grand scheme of things, but it is a penalty.
Delicious ball.
It is a really, really good ball in. They then do all right seeing it out. I mean, Wolves barely have 3 attempts, none of which are in any way, shape or form meaningful post 2-1. There's a lot of heart in mouth stuff in the ground as they're getting decent territory from time to time and moving around. But in the end, all the way through to the 96th minute of injury time, it felt like Liverpool have done a good job, and it also felt like it was for them a big win. I thought that was one of the things you got to see in the ground. They gave you the energy of this feels meaningful.
Yeah, you could see. You imagine things, but you can almost see the and Slot referenced it after the experience factor kick in, where there's a point at which in the last 5 minutes you go, we could low block this. We're an experienced team. We've seen it out against big teams in Europe. We know what we're doing. We're all good footballers. We know each other's game. I did think the only problems we really had after scoring were sort of self-inflicted in as much as we were a bit too cute playing it out at times.
We were capable of every player on the pitch was capable of having a mad 2 minutes.
Yeah, well,
that was what was driving me mad. They were all capable of just throwing something
that
in.
Moment as well when there was like Salah, Jones, there was someone else, with no one in front of them, and Salah conspires to play quite possibly the most infuriating pass he's ever attempted.
Oh, it's
to
like
play.
an open goal.
Yeah,
he could just keep running and kicking in the goal.
I was coming on to that. Well, I mean, there's 2 things. I mean, there's the Gakpo thing very late on, where he squares when you think he shoot. Well, from my angle anyway. But the Salah for Jones one, I mean, it's as bad. It's like an open goal miss, isn't it? Yeah. He's done everything right. Jones is right. It's perfect. I'm watching the line. He's holding it, and now slip it through. I mean, it's a different show we're doing, by the way. If that goes in, yes, we're still saying they're a bit slow. They're a bit this, a bit that. We're going, but look, they took it away because that wasn't that late in the game, was it? Was it maybe 81 or something? I
think it would have been a 4-1 game if that passing play goes the way in which it goes. Not least because I think Wolves would have lost their minds at that point as well, because the crowd were deeply unhappy with them as well. Yeah. So I think it would have been a pretty horrible last 15 minutes at Molineux.
Yeah, yes, it would have been. The game was there to be taken away from them. I wasn't thrilled with how we played in the attacking positions, really. I also think back to what Slot said about his talk at half-time at Ipswich, when he said to the attacking players, could you just run in behind a bit? They weren't really running in behind. Salah was too wide and Diaz was too wide at times. Jota was dropping very, very deep. I thought we made it easy for them in large swathes, but even so, we cut a swathe when we needed to.
Beth, the 2 centre-mids play well. In general, we're going to keep doing the thing with Gravenberch where we're going to keep saying, that one's really good, but what about your next test? And that's just going to be the case of it until we've had at least 20 games. I think we almost need to roll with those punches. They're going to be in the back of everyone's minds coming up on the horizon. Game against Chelsea, game against Arsenal, the side of the international break. But I actually think that in a number of ways, that was almost a bit of a bigger test, because you expect Liverpool to be at it against Chelsea at home from minute 1. I think this is another game where arguably Gravenberch is the most at it all the way through the match, and a few of his teammates are having pretty inconsistent games, and he manages to not just hold it together but at times excel.
Yeah, I think it's that sort of quiet consistency that has sort of defined his season so far. And I thought it was quite funny, actually, after the game. You saw on social media a couple of the lads were sort of taking the mick out of him for getting another Man of the Match award. And I think Trent put something on like Man of the Moment. And I think that must be lovely for him, just on a personal level. After coming in last season, obviously hadn't worked out at Bayern. He comes in, he's a little bit of a bit part player, and he's in the team and he's out the team last season. And I think now, there's obviously this feeling in the squad that they really trust him and really respect him and feel like he's an integral part of what they're doing. And I think, of course, there will be tests, for bigger tests to come, and there will be days where he's not quite at it, and that, that's to be expected of any player, let alone one who's only, 22 and playing in an unfamiliar position. But on all the evidence we've got from this season, I think he's just absolutely made to play in that position. And I think having McAllister alongside him really, really helps. And we'll probably get on to Szoboszlai in a minute because, you'd probably say certainly he got a little bit of stick, didn't he, after that miss. And I think it was almost a bit harsh because I actually think, I don't think he did a lot wrong. I know you can look at that and say, well, if you put it anywhere else but at the goalkeeper, then it goes in. But I think it was just more of a bit of good luck from the keeper than anything else. It obviously comes off his leg. I don't think it was sort of really an intentional sort of save. I think it was just a little bit of a fluke. And I think what Szoboszlai does, the legs that he has and the amount of running and intensity that he applies to every single game, I just think that gives Gravenberch and McAllister a far greater license to be brilliant. And so I think that for that reason, that blend of those three is really, really important.
I was going to say, I think it's hard sometimes for Szoboszlai because, as Beth said, his best work comes off the ball. But if you're playing as the most advanced attacking midfielder in the Liverpool team, then people expect your best work
away
to
at
be on
home
the ball.
away at home against a big boss of the league.
Yeah, like goals, assists, key passes, like really impactful things on the ball is what is expected of someone in that position. But that's not necessarily how he's playing the position. And I do think that the things he's doing off the ball are still vital, but he's always going to have this problem until he starts contributing the other side. I do agree to a certain extent with Beth as well about the chance, because when you look at it again, he never really looks at the goal. You can tell he's absolutely concentrating on getting a good contact. In fact, I've got into position, I get a good contact on the ball goes in. It just so happened that the good contact he got was directly towards the goalkeeper. So you can look at it and you say that's unlucky, but it was a situation where it's Robertson who plays the ball in, isn't it? So Robertson plays the ball in, and he's really the only one running into the 6-yard box. There's no one else is making that run. No one else is recognising this is the moment where we need to try and get players in the box. So I give him credit for that, and he's doing a lot of the things that you don't notice that are still important in winning football games. I just think for his own confidence sake, he needs to do some of the more obvious things that influence winning football games, i.e. scoring goals, setting people up, etc.
Yeah, he was one of those I thought was a classic case of his rhythm was a bit knocked. Perhaps if he played in midweek and got some minutes there because his touch and his passing wasn't quite right. But I do agree with you, Mar. I think when a ball comes across that fast, you're just making contact. Funnily enough, and the fact that he got there, that's a huge amount of credit. I thought it was Jota at first because I assumed it was Jota's position, and Szoboszlai wasn't necessarily the first person to have responsibility to be in that position, so he did well. What was interesting in the ground around where I was, I don't know what you found, Neil, was he was really a bit of a scapegoat whipping boy for a lot of our crowd. People were really turning on him, I thought, and I've heard that a little bit, a bit of vibe in comments. Szoboszlai was shit.
He's a hard watch.
He is and he isn't. If you watch, what the problem with Szoboszlai, Mo's just touched on it, he's better off the ball in recent times, which is surprising for a player who's got such gifts on the ball. And I do get that relative expectation is what is affecting some people's view of him. But what he's giving us off the ball, and Beth said this as well, it's phenomenal at times. The pressing is really, really strong, and you can't ignore that. Yes, there's a misplaced pass here, a shot he should have taken there, a finish here and there. But
I think it's a little bit what the role's demanding, Rob, and then I think it's a little bit of how he's interpreting it and what he's doing well. But I understand why in game we're all conscious of, and I think as well. This is why I'm going to do something on the trends with Josh Williams about how difficult it is to go away from home against anyone. and I think it's an important one. But what you used to seeing, at least at Anfield, so half the football we watch, broadly speaking, is you see a Liverpool side that's full of confidence, plays front foot football, the ball slides around quickly, moves fast, you pull sides apart, you take chances. You're not seeing him be part of much of that action. Even at Anfield,
really.
not as much of it as you'd like. So this is why I understand why people are finding it. Like, I keep watching his performances and just being a little, like, he was really poor against Forest, but loads of them were. Then he was good, but really good, but a bit weird in Milan, but at least he gets the goal. So that feels significant and important. Then the last couple, you're just a little bit... there would be, I think, for all parties, a game where he rocks up, gets a goal and an assist, or a goal and puts a great ball through. Or so, I think he could just do with, for everyone to feel it, because if I'm sat there thinking Liverpool are just lacking a bit of creative, which it was against Wolves, just a bit of creative fulcrum, I'm watching it going, well, there's a fella who at least gets to play as the most advanced of the midfielders, and he's the one I'd like to see that from. And you can say that that's harsh, and you can talk about the off-the-ball stuff, but I can understand how he's a hard watch for people at the minute when we feel as though we're against sides we're superior to.
I actually felt at one point I wouldn't have minded seeing him and McAllister swap positions. There was times in the first half when McAllister was getting bullied, and it's not the first time. McAllister can't help his physique, his physicality. He's a small guy against very big guys in the the melting pot of the centre mid number 6 positions, that in that part of the pitch, it's hard sometimes. And when he's receiving his ball back to goal, he was getting bullied. And I think Klopp said, of all the positions he played McAllister in last season, which was his best, the attacking number 8 position, call it 8, 10, whatever you want to call it. And Szoboszlai, no one's saying he's proven himself as a 6 or in a double pivot, but pre-season, I was saying I could see Szoboszlai evolving into a 6. His manager thinks he's a natural 6, and I don't think he should take Gravenberch's position as our primary 6. But I could see those two together, and McAllister top of the triangle. That might work better. I mean, I don't want to give up on Szoboszlai's quality. He's got all the gifts, but I do think,
and he is young.
Yeah, and he is young. But I think it could be a win-win for us to have McAllister higher up the pitch, where his touch and delicacy and vision would just be much more effective.
I don't think it's a coincidence, even though obviously the international break plays some part, that last year at Molineux, McAllister had probably his worst game in the 6th position.
Yeah.
And when Szoboszlai replaced him there,
with Jones, the two of them,
actually had one of his better games. I think the other thing that the game was screaming out for is Harvey Elliott. Because Harvey Elliott always has a great time. Like last year, obviously, he gets to go late on, but he scored in the FA Cup game there as well. And it seems like, talking about the dimensions and stuff like that, he seems to be able to manipulate them to his will. He's always able to find the right space. And you get to a situation where it's strange to talk about the injuries because we've only really got one. But I really think having that one would have made a big difference here, because if we'd have been able to say, okay, Dom, you've tried your best, 65, you come off, Harvey Elliott, come on, manipulate the spaces, I really do think we'd be thinking about a 4-1, 5-1 game.
I think the thing is as well, the other thing with Harvey not being available is you look at how competition has elevated the game of so many players within this squad. Luis Diaz is the prime example. Cody Gakpo is absolutely flying at the moment, and I do believe that is spurring Diaz on a little bit. And I think all over the pitch, Konate obviously lost his place in the team toward the end of last season, and now is, bar that mad decision not to clear the ball at the weekend aside, has been excellent. And I just think, for Szoboszlai, there isn't a natural replacement. Jones can come in there and can play there, and we can swap McAllister, but I just think he almost sort of knows that is his place. And I think Harvey would have been given a run out, certainly in midweek, if he'd been fit, and possibly even in another couple of games as well. And I do think when he's back and he's fit and hopefully, comes in and has a couple of good games, I do think that could help Szoboszlai. I do think it could give him a little bit of fire in his belly and sort of this is even greater desire to go on and show what he can do. I also feel as well like this Liverpool team have been so good, barring that Forest game, since Slot has come in. There always has to be a scapegoat in football. There always does. And I just think, who else could it be? Because the forward line have all been banging in the goals. The back line have looked really, really good. McAllister. Gravenberch has been excellent. So Szoboszlai, by default, I think, is the one who you feel like can do more. And I think a lot of the frustration is rooted in the fact that we know he can do more. We've seen him do more. He's incredibly gifted on the ball. So I think, I feel sorry for him because I think he does get a lot of stick. But it would be nice to see him banging in a couple more goals.
McAllister grows into it. which helps massively, and probably he's Liverpool's best midfielder for the 20 minutes that leads up to the end of the match, Beth. Very, very smart with all of that as well. And also dovetails quite nicely with Robertson. I think he really helps Robertson out when the lag first comes on with Robertson. I think he's a bit of a surprise to everybody. And then there's the sense, I think, that between them, Robertson and McAllister sort of just dampen it down on that side. There's 10 minutes where we feel quite exposed, even after the penalty, but I got the impression they just sort of, between them, almost by moving the ball, let the lad punch himself out, run. At some point, your legs begin to fade, and I think we got to see that. I thought McAllister was very important in that.
He was. I thought it was quite interesting as well after the game. I think it was Canate said that McAllister has been added to the leadership group under Slot. And you think for a young player who's come in, he's only been there a season. That's quite a vote of confidence, I guess, from the manager. And I think that speaks to how important he is, not just in terms of his brilliance on the ball, but like you said, in terms of his ability to sense when a game just needs to be toned down and managed. And I think he's excellent. I think he's. I really do believe that he will go down as one of Liverpool's best ever bits of business when you consider the fee, when you consider what he's capable of on the ball and sort of the leadership that he's able to bring within the team as well. I think, he didn't start particularly well. I did have that thought of, God, maybe it's just Molineux, you just need to just not play him. But he did very much grow into the game, and by the end, as you say, I think was probably Liverpool's best midfielder.
I want to talk about Jota, Mo. I think you get to the mad booking. It's not a mad booking in that. I think it probably is a booking. It's the fact that the referee isn't going to book him. Then listens to the crowd, takes off.
And potentially someone in his ear as well.
Yeah, it all goes on, and then finally does book him. It's all a bit odd in that, it looked like that was a situation. Which of our lads got booked on the touchline?
Oh, I think it was Sivka, the assistant manager.
Yeah. Okay. He got himself booked in immediately after. They all look and dress the same. It's not my fault. I was in row A, a long way away.
Well, it was him and Sean Derry were having a bit of an argument about it, I think. So
there we are. So that's the way in which that goes over there. But I think that immediately after that booking, right the way up until half time, and I think he's probably of the front three, the best performer over the course of the game. He just makes a lot happen in quite an agricultural way. None of it's sort of Firmino-esque flicks and tricks and turns, but suddenly the football match just revolved around Jota in quite an interesting way, and Liverpool get 2 goals out of it, arguably.
He's a pest. He's just a pest. He just puts himself in positions the opposition don't want him to be in. And it's like you say, it's not always massive contributions. Sometimes it's just small things. But for the goal, I thought it was interesting that he recognised that he was up against Larson out there at wide. And so rather than thinking that he's a defender who naturally might be able to front him up and you have to cut back his side, he's like, no, I can run this guy. Yeah. And he did. And he got in and he got the ball in. And
it's a really good ball.
It is. It's a fantastic ball. And it's again in one of those maxims where if you're someone who gets on the end of crosses a lot, you know exactly what you want out of a cross, and he was able to deliver it. But obviously you have the element of the fact that he's going back to his old grounds, and the crowd weren't consistently giving him stick like you've seen some do, but they did certainly enjoy his booking, put it that way. So it was almost like that was just like, oh right, is that how you feel, is it?
Yeah.
And he's got that in him. He's got that kind of snark, that level of devil in him that maybe not all of our players have. And so far this season, touch wood, he's been able to really channel it to his and to our advantage.
He was there to play 90 as well, Rob. Nunez with the flu. He might have come off, possibly, although it wouldn't surprise me. I thought the manager's use of subs was dead interesting. Some guy emailed me off the back of the review and said it drove me mad that he didn't use any more subs. And I understand why that's the case. But there are games where everyone just looks and feels, if not necessarily brilliant, then settled. And I think it sort of helped Liverpool towards the end of the match to still have Jota on there, to still have him running around. Every now and again, you're not going to get your nice little 70 minutes and then a rest. You're going to be asked to keep doing channels. And he did. I thought he was constantly willing. I think, as I'll say again, I think of all the Liverpool's attackers on the day, I thought he was the best.
It's an interesting thing, when you play your first team more often than not. I found myself this season, and I'm a person who screams out for a substitute.
You love a sub.
I love a half-time sub, you know that. But I found myself going, I wasn't happy with the performance, and I thought, we've got to be able to make changes. But then I looked around the team and I thought, no one was stinking the place out enough, and the balance was sort of acceptable enough. I thought, they just need to do this but better. Didn't look like anyone was losing legs particularly. So I think if Darwin had been on the bench, it would have been a classic case. Will Darwin just, if you get the right version of him, can elevate everything? And I think he did.
And scares the opponents, makes them drop 5 yards, 10 yards,
makes
etc.
it a different game. I did think the only obvious change was Szoboszlai was getting, well, you felt the crowd were frustrated with him, he was getting frustrated. The switch for Jones felt a natural one, but beyond that, they didn't feel an easy move. I liked and was also frustrated in equal parts with Jota's performance, in as much as he was more present in the game, I'd say, than he is often in other games where he just bags and goes, thank you very much, and drops the mic kind of performance, which we all love, really. It was almost the opposite of that. He was dropping very, very deep, which sort of plays into part of my thinking about saying I just didn't see enough trying to run in behind by our forwards. And how many shots does he get away in the course of the game? I mean, he's there at the pivotal moment where we get the penalty, and the cross it's one of the assists of our season, by the way. I thought it was a fantastic cross. But I'd like to see him get more shots away. Having said that, I'm not picking on him. Diaz, who's been exemplary, does Diaz get a shot away? I'm not sure he does. I think of our forwards, I'm sure Salah's the only one who really gets a couple of shots in. There was a general problem, I think, for both sides. No one was shooting the bloody thing.
No one was. No, there were very few striking it, but then it's what you're up against and where the game finds you. And as part of that, Beth, Rob said earlier on, both centre-halves from Liverpool's point of view are capable of being absolutely exceptional. It is a funny game for Konate. He's never actually just 7 out of 10. He has moments of 4, is predominantly 10. And Virgil just hits 9 and stays there, frankly, all the way through the match. Both central defenders, as I say, I'll say again, they do play excellently. If Konate, and it isn't just the goal, I think there's another couple of moments immediately, well, actually a little bit before and then for about 5-10 minutes afterwards where I think he knows and he then becomes a little bit rash. Then he calms himself back down again, but both play ever so well.
They do, and I think, we've spoken a lot in the last few weeks about how Slot has improved Gravenberch and how he's improved Luis Diaz, and I actually think taking that sort of the goal and the mad 10 minutes afterwards aside for Konate, I think he's improved him massively, and maybe that is just more of a confidence thing, because we know he's been brilliant at times under Klopp, but his form just seemed to fall off a cliff toward the back end of last season. Now maybe that was part of sort of the collective malaise that the team were in, but I think he's been pretty flawless apart from that on Saturday. So been really impressed with him. And then I think Virgil is just it was just a classic Virgil, like under the radar, 9 out of 10. Doesn't do anything flashy, but is just brilliant at everything that he does. And I think Virgil is one of those players who does that more often than not. And, whenever he makes a slight mistake, it'll get clipped up and all people will go on social media saying, oh, well, John Terry was the best I've ever seen. And, he's not even in my top 10. But I just think that is the brilliance of Virgil, is that most weeks he's just at that imperious level and he's so good, and we're so accustomed to him being so good that we don't even really notice.
Yeah, I think he's been in the shout for man of the match every single game this season. I don't want to tempt fate. It's about as consistent as I can ever remember him, and that's some high bar. He's not making. It's not that he's just not making mistakes. The ball is a magnet to his head every time in a defensive situation. I agree with everything said on Konate. I think he recovered from his blip. I mean, I think why he comes off the pitch thinking he's man of the match, because he remembers there's a late sort of match-winning tackle, isn't there?
Block.
Yeah, which, the body on the line tackle is something Virgil wouldn't deign to get himself dirty enough for these days, and feel if he has to do that, he's failed somehow. But Ibu's been doing a few of those lately, and they're really, really good. So I think that they're quite the pair, and I think it's nice to see. It's becoming a competitive thing, isn't it? Those two versus Saliba and Gabriel. Nice to see Saliba and Gabriel beginning to ship goals at a rate of knots. Let me just add that little bit of salt to the situation.
And it's nice to see Ibu actually use his talents in the opposing penalty area as well. I think I've never known a guy like him basically scored 3 goals in 2 weeks, then waits 2.5 years, and then does the same thing again. So
streaky.
We've hopefully got another one, because he likes doing them in 3s. But I think it was really interesting, some of what Virgil was saying after the match about him, but also about Salah. Going back to your point about the substitutions, I think there's quite a few people who would have taken Salah off and maybe looked to see if Chiesa can do something. But Virgil pointedly made mention of Salah heading the balls out of his own box in the last 10 minutes. I don't think that was an accident.
He makes a little bit of an error on one where he tries to overplay it, Mo, and just drives you mad, because he's come back scrapped like a demon.
And then he almost gives it away.
Then he scraps like a demon again to get it back, but he was absolutely in there mucking bullets.
And I looked at some of the stats. I think he made 5 ball recoveries across the game. He won half of his duels, which again are good numbers for Salah in comparison to what he's like previously. But with Konate, in the same way Virgil's kind of been the big brother to all of our centre halves, even Joel Matip is kind of older than him. I thought some of what he said about Ibu after the game was really important. It wasn't just the fact that he said that he's a great defender and he's always improving. He can be one of the greatest. It's like he's now taking it more seriously. So clearly he's had a word to say that maybe you shouldn't be playing FIFA till 3 a.m. Maybe you shouldn't be eating all of those things that you shouldn't be. You just take it more seriously as a professional defender. And it feels like Virgil has taken that responsibility to say, no, I'm not letting you waste your talent. You're going to be alongside. You're going to be the guy who, when I'm no longer the guy, you're going to be the guy. And I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that's the case. And I think sometimes having someone who's such a dominant defender in the back line sometimes makes it harder for those other defenders to then be dominant when he's not there, because they're so used to him doing everything. But like you were saying before with Ibu doing all of the last ditch stuff, it now feels like they do have, okay, well, this is my role and this is your role. And Ibu's kind of coming out of himself a little bit more, like he's been a little bit more expressive on the pitch. Like we saw that, I think it was against Bournemouth towards the end of the game. There was a couple of times where they nearly scored and he was very much expressive. He was giving Callagher the big hug to say, yes, we do not concede. And he's taken a lot more responsibility within the team. And I think that's only going to be a benefit to everybody.
Huge positive. It really is. All right, then, coming up with John Gibbons is Ian Salmon talking about his Play Girls Don't Play Guitars.
It's John Gibbons in the studio with Ian Salmon. You know him, but he's not here to talk about football this time. He is here to talk about theatre, because Ian, the hit play that you wrote, Girls Don't Play Guitars, is back. And so congratulations for that, first of all, because
Thank you very
it's
much.
hard enough writing a play and then hard enough getting it on, but for it to be popular enough for it to come back for the second one is phenomenal.
It's absolutely brilliant. I mean, it's an absolute gift. I love doing the play. I think the play is absolutely brilliant. I think the whole show is brilliant. And that's not because I've written the thing. It's because everybody who works on it is at the absolute top of their game. I'm working with 10 actor musos. I play guitar, I play bit of bass, bit of banjo, I can play a bit of piano. I will not pick up an instrument in front of any of these people because I will just embarrass myself. They're brilliant. It's like you've got a lad who is on the back line who he's an excellent guitarist. Then he moves on to keyboards. Then the other day suddenly found out he's actually a drummer and he's a phenomenal drummer.
He's just messing about.
And he can sing and he can act, and they're all, it's like being in Prince's band. You're doing 10 different choreographed things at the same time, except we don't find them.
You talked there about, I mean, quite modestly, but about the fact that it's not because of you, but how good it is. But I do actually remember the first time it came on and the first time you saw it, and I think you came in here the day after and you were like, John, I just can't believe how good it is. Like what they've done to your words, and you've obviously written it, but there's so many other more people who then bring it to life, and I just loved how it looked. I remember before it had even started thinking this is great because the staging sort of looked phenomenal, and then what people do, and you talk about a gift, that must be the biggest gift of all, is that all these really talented actors, but producers, and stage managers, stage designers and everything have just brought your story to life and made it magical.
It's unbelievable. It's an absolute privilege to do it. And the reason I became a playwright in the first place, because I never intended to be, as I think I've said a million times, the first time I wrote a one-act play and I got into a room with actors, I was like, okay, this is great, isn't it? I'm going to do this forever from now on. As soon as you see actors bring your words to life, they do things you never expected to do. You're looking at things going, well, I wrote that, but that sounds a million times than it ever sounds better than it sounds in my head. And on this, without sounding mawkish or cliched, there's a lot of love for the play in the room, and the people who are working on it all think it's the best thing they've ever done. They love doing the play, and you've got a group of 4 girls playing a group of 4 girls. They are a group. They're a group of friends. They work together. They know each other really well. 3 of them are actually living in the same house at the moment while they're up here doing it. So
they're a proper gang, and that's the best bands are a gang.
Yeah,
and they're about
the Clash were the best. The Clash were a gang. The Bunny Men, the best. You want. As a band, you start off as a group of mates just wanting to make music, which is what happened with the Live Beds. A group of mates who just want to make music. What you become afterwards is what you become, but the best ones retain that idea that we're mates, we're a gang.
Yeah. Well, the Live Beds, you've mentioned them there, that this is what the play is about, and What I loved about it is that the Merseybeat era is so well known. It's well known throughout the world. You know, we were on the way back from Edinburgh for Neil's live show, and we spoke to a American couple in their 70s who were coming to Liverpool for the first time, and they were like, we're retired and now we're doing what we, and this lady in particular was like, I always wanted to come to Liverpool and go to the Cavern, and so it's still bringing people to the city. And it's not just the Beatles, it is so many other bands, but this was a story I didn't know too much about, and I'm sure plenty of people have told you, so you've managed to find this story and tell this story that's about simultaneously the maybe the best known cultural era in Liverpool's history, but a group who, you know, had a big part of it, but many people, including myself, didn't know a huge amount about.
Well, in fairness, nor did I. I knew nothing about them at all. I'd never heard of them. And my mate, Paul Fitzgerald, is a local music writer, and he's a gig promoter, and he's run bars, and he's immersed in the music scene in Liverpool. And he saw this photo on a Facebook page, the Liverpool Nobody Knows tour, I think it is, I should remember this, of these 4 girls on the ferry, holding guitars underneath the live birds. And he's like, who the hell are these, and why don't I know anything about them? So he did a bit of research, because he's good at research. I just get bored and wander off. And he found out that one of the live birds, Mary McGlory, married a German publisher in Hamburg, called Frank Dostel. So he started ringing German publishers until he found Frank Dostel and said, look, I'd like to interview your wife. He's like, well, you're lucky I allowed my wife to speak to one Englishman a year. And you're the one.
You're the first one he's asked. Yeah.
So he got an interview with Mary, and he had this interview. He published it on getintothis.co.uk, local, well, global, obviously, because everything's global, but locally run website. And got good response. And somebody said there should be a film. I said, I'll write it. And everybody left it there. He went to town one night and he bumped into Drew Schofield. And Drew, for people who don't know outside Liverpool, Drew's a legend in Liverpool. Yeah. He's done so much theatre over the years. In the early 80s, he was Scully in the Alan Bleasdale show. He's the lad who grows up wanting to be Kenny Dalglish. The whole programme that people haven't seen for years, but anyone who's seen it knows how good it is. His brother's Elvis Costello in it. It's really, really, it's a great comedy show. And he bumped into Drew. He said, I've got this book, I want to turn into a film. And he went, it's not a film, that, mate, that's a play. And Paul went, I don't know how to write plays, but I know a lad who does. Asked me if I fancied writing it. And then more research and meeting the girls and finding out what the full story was, because there's so much in the story that's just unbelievable. Yeah. So many things happen to them. And it's I think it's because of distance, and so basically they form in 62 because the 4 girls who go to the Cavern, and 2 of them know each other and the other 2 don't know each other at all. Mary has her photo with her first band, the Squaws, in Merseybeat, despite the fact that all they have is a photo and the instruments. They have no songs and they don't know how to play. Really? They literally do not know how to play. They just bought it because it looks like it might be easy, but they won't do. They don't want to follow the lads. They don't want to watch the lads. They won't do what the lads are doing. They can't see a reason why not. Sylvia and Val's already a good guitarist. Sylvia becomes a drummer, and they see the photos, they track it down, and that's how you form bands in the 60s. You track somebody down from a photo because Merseybeat puts your entire address in for you. So they find her. They form this band. So they form the band 62. In 64, after having supported the Kinks and the Rolling Stones on tour and hung out with the 2 of them, having Pam joined as a singer because of their connection with the Kinks, they go to Hamburg and they never come back. So they're massive in Germany and they're massive across the continent. They end up being huge in Japan. But for these 4 years, in the midpoint of probably the most exciting decade that's ever happened, the biggest global revolution in popular culture that you'll ever see in your life, they're in the epicenter of the most notorious city on earth. They're living off the Reeperbahn. They're playing on the Gross Freiheit. They're hanging out with prostitutes and gangsters, and that the whole nightlife scene that Hamburg was notorious for. They're 18 when they go there. They're 22 when the group splits up.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. But and it's just what I love about the players, you're watching it, and these girls are just like, they just don't give a fuck about what it is that they're supposed to be doing or what, the line is obviously the ironic, girls don't play guitars. It was allegedly said sort of by John Lennon.
It's not even allegedly, because I know them. Yeah. And John Lennon said to them, don't be soft, girls don't play guitars.
Yeah.
They now think he may have been trying to push them a little bit, but it's Lennon, so, who knows?
Well, who knows? Who knows? And he could be a bit of a bellend on occasion, and that's the truth. But I think, it is. But I'm sure loads of people were saying that to them, probably including family members and stuff like that. What do you do? But they were like,
do you know what? Their
Their
families were ridiculously supportive. So you imagine you're a parent in, your early 40s, basically war generation parents, and your daughters come home and say, I'm joining the band. Okay, sound. We're moving to London for a month before we go to Hamburg. Yeah, sound, go for it, girls. And their family all supported them.
Brilliant.
And let them go off to Germany and make their lives there.
Yeah.
In an era when young people could go and live on the continent and make their lives and change the world by making their lives by living in Europe.
What a thing.
It's unreal, and it's almost thought it was a good idea.
You mentioned there you've met the girls now a lot. The band, the real band.
Two of them, Mary and Sylvia, are still with us.
Yeah.
Pam and Val. Pam passed away about 2005. Val sadly passed away not long before we started work on the script.
Right.
And Val, this is how little known they were to me at the time. If you watch, because I have gone back and watched it on YouTube, if you go back and watch the Brits from 2016, obviously the year when everybody in music, all the legends were passing away. So Prince dies, George Michael dies at the end of the year, Bowie obviously. When the tributes are playing, so it'd be the early 2017 one, when the tributes are playing, the in memoriam bit, there's Prince's name on screen. There's Valerie Gell's name on screen next to him. And she was paid tribute to by the industry. But still, nobody knew.
Yeah.
Nobody knew how great the story was.
Well, and that's one of the things you've helped to do, is to tell people all about it, and for people not knowing about them, so many more people now do it, and after the second run of the play, the next run of the play, even more people will know about them, and for the two surviving members, that must be a real thrill, because like you say, they're living their lives, but you don't just tell the story, you get them up on stage and things like that, and I hope I'm not giving too much away, but often sort of play out the last number, and it must be amazing for them to like kind of to feel like rock stars again, but also to go, well look, this story will outlive us now, and that's brilliant.
Yeah, it's fantastic, because they knew the story was great, and I think they were approached in the early 80s. Somebody approached them with the idea of a TV series, but it never happened. And they've had various times when they've regrouped and they got together and they played like festivals and things. And for them to do this, for me, there's a responsibility to them. My responsibility to them from day one was to tell their story to the world and to get their story on stage and to let people know how great this story was and how great this band was. Somebody, I think it was in The Guardian a couple of months back, compared their version of Diddley Daddy, Bo Diddley's song, because every Bo Diddley track has his name in it somewhere, to the Velvet Underground. It's kind of like, yeah, I can see that. The guitars are very sort of velvety, and I'm a long-term Velvet Underground fan since the early 80s. Obviously, they'd long gone by then. But the girls played raw R&B. They didn't play Merseybeat. They were never a Merseybeat group because they weren't here. They wanted to be the Stones. And they played really hard-edged R&B, and the music is brilliant. The selection of music in the show is brilliant. But my responsibility to them was showing their life on stage, but also the first night we opened, they had their families in. Their families were seeing what they did in the 60s, and you're showing children and grandchildren their parents and grandparents meeting on stage. You're showing them a bit of their life. It's a really weird thing to do. So you've got to get it right. It's my responsibility. But they've got this, obviously the book's come out since, and there's a lot of attention. There's a documentary in the New York Times. So they're getting more and more attention since the play. And they've got this whole second life that you don't expect when you're in your late 70s. They're in like early 70s when we first met. It's 5 years ago. They're now moving into late 70s, but they're playing again. And yeah, I still meet people occasionally tell me, oh yeah, I was there the night the girls got up. I was like, yeah, we did it every night. That was the big secret, but we wouldn't tell you. It's not every night this time. Obviously, they are that bit older.
Yeah, of course.
So
yeah.
But they will be there or thereabouts, and I will see them in about an hour's time. And they have been in the room this week already. But they're brilliant. They're loving it. They're loving the fact that people know now, and so much of what they're doing They're about to re-release all their original recordings from the 60s with a couple of new tracks that were recorded with. So Mary and Sylvia from the band are still alive. They're drums and bass and drums respectively. And they've done some new recordings with the Val and Pam from the show. So there's a Live Birds, a cross-generational Live Birds, 2 tracks on the new CD that's coming out. So they've got a CD coming out of the original tracks, remastered, remixed, and the music has a second life. So everything they did has a second life. And there's only 3 songs that the band wrote themselves. Pam Birch wrote 3 songs. Well, they found a 4th now. But the songs are phenomenal.
Yeah.
The songs in this are really, really famous. Roll Over Beethoven is obviously really famous, but most of the rest, as you know, they're not the obvious 60s hits. They're slightly more obscure, and 3 of them I guarantee you've never heard in your lives because they were written by the band.
Yeah, and there's one of them in particular I can still hear now. And
It's Got to Be You.
beautiful. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just a beautiful, beautiful song.
There were a couple who came to see the show in the first couple of weeks. They got married to that song.
Yeah, well, I can see it.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, you can see it. It's on now. By the time people are watching this, it's there. It's on at the Royal Court. It's on over 4 weeks. Is that right?
Yeah, as we speak, it's the 26th of September. I'm in the middle of tech and dress rehearsals and the whole whirlwind that's going on at the moment. I'm about to leave here and go straight to a dress rehearsal. We will then have some tea, and then we have what's called the open dress, which is all the people who work at the theatre, volunteer at the theatre, community groups. They'll see, so we have a couple hundred people in seeing it for the first time. Tomorrow is final dress, and then we open tomorrow night, so that's Friday night. So by the time you see this, which I think is Monday, we'll have done Friday night, Saturday matinee, which is mad. It's the Royal Court Saturday matinees are the maddest, most unique thing on earth. The atmosphere is unreal, and Saturday night, which is always a big night. And we are open on the Monday for the first week. But from then we're on till the 26th of October, which is running from Tuesday to Saturday, with a matinee on the Saturday. There's either 1 or 2 Wednesday matinees, but I'm not sure which week they are. But it's all on the Royal Court website.
Yeah, absolutely. So get yourself to the Royal Court website if you want to get tickets. Like I say, I've been to see it. It is absolutely brilliant. So I would encourage anyone to do it. You've got plenty of opportunities over the next few weeks. So if obviously you live locally or you just sort of come in for the games, do try and sort of combine them. I would really encourage you to do so. The food's decent at the Royal Court as well. So if you want to get the food package, it's better than it needs to be as well.
It's honest to God, I love eating there. It's great.
Yeah, it is really good. So nice option to have a bit of a night out. But Ian, thanks so much for coming in. And
thanks for letting me talk about it.
So proud of you that it's gone so well.
Oh, cheers, man. Thank you.
And we're back with Beth, with Mo, with Rob. Thank you very much to Ian, as ever. It is a great show. Do get down to see it if you've got the opportunity to do so. Bologna drew with Shakhtar at home in Game 1 in the Champions League. They got a decent point at the weekend against Atalanta because they went down to 10 men and had to see the second half out. But they do sit 13th now. The manager, the new manager, is called Vincenzo Italiano, which just feels a bit on the nose.
Where's he from?
He's actually madly born in Germany.
Of course.
I did check that out this morning.
Couldn't have got away with it in Italy,
Couldn't have believed he was born in Germany. But Vincent's English. Mo, he's done well in cups in his time at Fiorentina. It's worth pointing that out. But listen, they lost important lads from last season, not just the manager, not just with transfers, but also lads went back on loan who've been really important to them, including the lad Christensen who's at Leicester. The point about this is our most straightforward league stage game by a mile.
I think so. I think, like you say, they've lost some of those players. I think the other big miss is Lewis Ferguson, who was, he was objectively the best midfielder in Serie A last season. He won the award. And I think without him, they end up finishing 3rd rather than 5th. And he'd done his ACL, I think, in April, and he's still not back yet. And they haven't really been able to replace him. But the thing with Bologna is they have a little bit of the same as Atalanta, in as much as it's hard to really predict them, but they are young. Their model was very much buying young players with potential. So most of them are under 23, under 24. But they're young, they're spunky, as a lot of young players can be, but they're also a little bit inconsistent. They need to be perfect to come to us, and Italiano said that as much as himself, and come to us and do well. I wonder what effect that 45 minutes against Atalanta against 10 men did, because that kind of backs to the wall performance against a team who's in the Champions League is exactly probably what they're going to be expecting to do at Anfield. And they only concede in the 90th minute, so they nearly get away with it. So you wonder, does it give them confidence, or does it kind of shatter that confidence, the fact that they do concede at the end?
Or just takes the legs out of them. It's one of those where it's suddenly become a shame. When I saw they went down to 10, I thought, that would be nice if it was Tuesday. All of a sudden, one of those ones, that'd be nice if it was Tuesday, wouldn't it? Also, it'd just be closer, and me and Rob Gutmann do not want to defer our gratification at any time.
No.
If you've got any gratification going, bring it on. That's what we say. Pick me a team, Roberto, and then Beth can judge you. I'll judge it as well as you go. Oh, more accurately, what are you changing from the weekend? It is a Champions League game, but I'll say again, if there's a Champions League game where Liverpool should be able to make a few changes, it is this one. So what would you do?
I'm not. You can say two sentences though. It's most eminently winnable, but it's still not. It's not a gimme in the sense that we saw virtually the same set of players. Atalanta, I know Atalanta are better than Bologna, and I know there's a different set of circumstances, but we went into Atalanta at home in Europa very confident last season, bossed them for a good half an hour, should have been 2-0 up, and then forgot to play and finished losing 3-0. And I'm not saying that can happen again, but anyone thinks we just have to show up to win this is mistaken, and I'm not just saying that as platitude. So, and I think Slot will know this, and I think he will... It's not going to treat it like it's a semi-league cup game by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's going to be about rhythm and creating the right sort of week going into Palace.
It's worth saying Palace, though, is Saturday 12:30.
Yeah,
so we're going from Wednesday 8 o'clock to Saturday 12:30.
Very much aware of that. So he will be thinking, well, I think it depends on Darwin Núñez is a shoo-in to start if this illness, flu or whatever he had is something he's totally over by now and he's able to train properly Monday, Tuesday going into the game. So you would expect that to happen. You do wonder whether it's Chiesa time again, whether he thinks give Chiesa 60, Salah 30, have a very fresh version of Salah. But then again, I don't think Salah's going to agree with that as well we know. Does Diaz come back in for Gakpo?
Gakpo come back in for Diaz?
Well, yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, I suppose it's the other way around. I'm just thinking of the way the match finished. Tough one to call. I suspect he does give... I think if I'm making a bet, it's only 55-45, I'd say Gakpo starts. In midfield, I feel Szoboszlai will go again. He came off. I think he missed the game against West Ham, so I think he'll go again. McAllister, don't know. Gravenberch, just don't know. You'd expect Curtis Jones to definitely start. So I think Curtis comes in for one of those two, but two of the normal three start. At the back, again, difficult to say. Will he give Kwanzaa a game in for Konate again because of Konate's injury record? Maybe. One of the fullbacks you'd expect to change. So I think I'm saying we might change a player in each section of the pitch. And I think I said that last time before Milan, and I think that'll happen again.
He's almost, I might have to show my work like it's countdown. He's very, very similar to where I've ended up there, Beth. I feel as though with it, I think it might be a bit touch and go between Trent and Bradley.
Yeah.
I think he might have an eye off Gomez's performance against West Ham to maybe consider looking at Gomez ahead of Van Dijk. I agree with Rob on Jones. I'd probably plump for him coming in for McAllister and then have McAllister as your sub in any direction. I agree with Rob in that I think Salah starts. I also wonder, therefore, whether or not if Núñez isn't ready, if he might actually have a look at Chiesa through the middle, which we saw him do, because he might want to the point of the 60. And I think Gakpo probably does get on. Do you think all that's fair?
Yeah, I think probably 4 or 5 changes maybe from the weekend. I think he maybe should rest Van Dijk just purely because you need to rest him at some point, and you look at the games coming up and you think, when is he going to get a rest? But I don't think he will. I think he's more likely to rest Konate.
The thing I would say is in the champ, you would be playing Van Dijk against Leipzig, against Leverkusen. So if you've got a concern about the load, and we know that Holland are going to play him twice in the upcoming run as well.
It's the game to rest him, isn't it?
And I want him to play against Palace. Let me be crystal clear. So I just saw that's where I ended up.
No, I agree. I think that is a smart move. I think maybe Bradley comes in. I'd be bang up for some more kamikaze Costas action, but I don't think he's going to change both fullbacks. Yeah, I think 4 or 5 across the pitch. I think Gakpo definitely, Núñez definitely if he's fit. I like that Chiesa idea actually. I think he's someone we sort of saw definitely as being like right wing, didn't we? And obviously, sort of Slot shows us last week that he does think he can play through the middle. So I'm not expecting sort of wholesale changes, but I think there will be quite a few.
The interesting one for me is the decision to bring on Gomez for Robertson at the weekend rather than Tsimikas. Now, is that because he's looking at wanting to give Gomez more minutes because it means he's going to play him, or does it mean that he wants to bring Tsimikas in and he didn't want to play him in that game? So
I think it was just tactical because he's better defensively and he wanted to see out the game, wasn't it?
I mean, it could be. It could be. There's not necessarily. You're right. I guess it doesn't necessarily have to be with a key to the next game.
I think it also the lad who was up against is absolutely rapid.
Yeah,
and it might have been Gomez is my fastest possible option at this point.
But of all of the defensive options so far up to this point, even though he just had a 90, Gomez has still had the least minutes. So in terms of trying to keep him in rhythm to maybe come in again. But yeah, I would like to see him play a game without Virgil. Because, as you said, they've got 2 games. Netherlands got 2 games against Hungary and Germany, and he's definitely going to play both those. And he's definitely going to play the whole game both times.
There is a week gap between Palace and the first international game. There is a case. So what I'm saying is, you could argue that you could go very strong for Bologna and Palace. They've got a week off, and it's the other side of the international break, really, where I think he's got decisions to make. And unfortunately, that's Chelsea at home on the Sunday. But that's the game where you've got a set of lads possibly coming off from 2 games in the immediate preceding period and travel. It's Chelsea where I think he's going to be called on to be bold with how he rotates and go with the freshest lads, perhaps, rather than the best lads.
Well, I think from the Dutch guys' perspective, we're all right with that because, like I say, they play on Monday night against Germany.
Do they?
So there's potentially a lot more time for them.
But the other thing I think is interesting, just with an eye on that as well, that this is part of why I think, for instance, I do want Curtis to start because he started against West Ham. He's got some decent time again in this one, but I also think there's every chance you're looking at him for that game against Chelsea saying, you know what, we can't do this McAllister. We don't want to do not even we can't. We just don't want to do this McAllister thing again.
Yeah.
But it would be nice if Curtis therefore had another 90.
I think he's a shoo-in for Wednesday. I'll tempt fate by saying that. I think he is. I thought he was excellent as a substitute.
He's played really well,
and he was good the other night. Yeah, it's definitely his time. I think his form will show that I know we've looked at it as a set midfield 3 at the moment, but I think if Harvey had been fit as well and Curtis hadn't had his little setback, I think we'd have been looking at perming any 3 from 5 virtually in every game.
And if you then look at it and you extend that, Nunez isn't going to go away in this next one, and then you end up in a situation where if you get Curtis in continuing his good form, Gakpo continuing his excellent form, then when we do get to that Chelsea game and Diaz and McAllister are coming back from South America, you're maybe able to say, well, you know what, it's all right, boys. You start this one from the bench because we back Curtis, we back Gakpo, and if we need you, which we will do, we'll call on you on 60, and you've just got to do half an hour.
We might have to back Chiesa as well. I'm not saying we change everything for Chelsea, which is going to be probably our toughest game so far this season, but I think this is what I mean. We might have to be a bit bolder. So we have in our minds, because he's shown us it, a set 11. I think we might have to say it's actually only six of that set 11 will actually start Chelsea, and that's no bad thing because, as you said, so many interchangeable positions.
Absolutely. Okay, well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much to Mo, to Beth, and to Rob. Sam for looking after the images if you've YouTubed it, Andy for looking after the audio across the board on either side. We've had Ian and John as well. See you, Gravity Max, if you get the opportunity to do so. Mo will be on the cop. We did that bit as well, and do respond to the email top of the show, and it'll be in all the descriptions underneath. See you later on.